Thanks for tuning into this episode of Through Jeremiah's Eyes. Today I am joined by a very impactful leader and amazing friend of mine. Today we are going to be talking about what it means to fail and how to become comfortable with failing. So Milosh, if you could please introduce yourself.
Hey everybody, I'm Milosh McAdoo, and I'm a junior animal science student with a concentration in animal industry at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. Three things you should know about me is I really love agriculture, I really love advocacy, and I really love working with people, and I hope to intertwine those things in whatever I do in the future as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, of course.
So just to kick off the conversation, what do you think that the most proud moment in your life has been? The moment that's brought you the most joy, and you're like, yes, I did this. I had a success in this realm.
Oh, that's crazy. I think the most proud that I've been, honestly, was when I found out I got my scholarship. And to me, it was about more than just, going to school. For me, there was like a lot at stake for me to get this scholarship. And it was, kind of my segue into being able to go to college. And so, coming from a family with not a whole lot of people who went to college, it was really important for me. And so getting this scholarship and then being able to come to A&T and gain so much from this experience, I think has been probably one of my proudest moments.
How do you think that the journey to be able to achieve that look? Do you have it all planned out, all mapped out? Like I'm gonna take this class, and then this class is gonna help me get into this, or I'm gonna do this e-board, and this is gonna help me. How the plan look out, if you plan anything?
Yeah, honestly, there wasn't a plan, to be honest. I only applied to 3 different schools, right? So, I was very strategic about which schools I applied to, but before, kind of leading up to those experiences, this sounds, kind of cliche or corny to some people, but I really genuinely just followed my passions. I was a part of an organization in high school where I was able to do more leadership activities. I raised livestock when I was in high school as well. So I think that all those experiences that I had and all those lessons that I learned were really came from me just, following my passions. And I think that led up to me having success, not only obtaining a scholarship, but just being here at A&T.
That's dope. And I feel the same exact way. Like college, getting here, like everything that I did, I know that. So for example, doing like honor societies and all that
right.
stuff, I knew it would help me get into college, but it wasn't like a strict plan that I had to stick to. If I wanted to do something, then I would do it. If I didn't want to, then I didn't really do it. But I finally fell into that, strictly, if I don't care to do anything, I'm not going to do it late in high school. But it's something that I've had to learn how to get to that point. Because I also like planning stuff. I don't know if you do the same thing.
I do. I think that, another thing for me, you talking about that kind of reminded me of kind of what a lot of my peers did. A lot of times it was the case that they would want to take certain classes to raise their GPA and everything. And I was doing the opposite. I was taking classes that actually brought down my GPA because it wasn't weighted anyway. But it was truly because, I trusted in my interest. I trusted in my passions and everything. And I've seen myself be a lot more happy because of it. I think that, that was a really big step for me, is just not following what other people were doing or not falling into, other people's expectations in high school and really just doing what, made me happy.
How do you think that you got to that point? Was it parental support, sibling support?
For me, it was probably a lot of not parental support, sibling support for me. I think that I was the type of person, I'm the youngest sibling, so I watched a lot of what my older siblings did, and so I saw the way that they kind of navigated their high school experiences or just navigated life experiences in general. And so because of that, I think that I was able to take some of what they learned and apply it to my life. I knew that, that there were certain things that they didn't want to do, that they felt pressured to do, or there were certain things that they weren't allowed to do, just because of, whatever standards people had set for them. And so for me, I was just like, what? I really like working with animals. I'm going to take this class. It was not the class that my parents wanted me to take, but I was just like, what? This is going to be my experience. I'm going to be spending time in the classroom. I'm going to be the one doing the work. And so it eventually paid off, tenfold for me, kind of sticking up for myself. And my older siblings would tell you that, I've probably been the most outspoken one out of the 3 of us. And so, I feel like I've kind of been that way since I was younger. And so it was just really those opportunities that meant a lot to me. Like I wanted to be in those certain classes and I wanted to do certain things, and I was just like, I'm going to do it. Why not? So
yeah. Amazing. And on the flip side of successes and achieving all these great and amazing and upstanding things, there's also this thing called failure that a lot of people see as a bad thing. So how would you describe failure?
Failure is one of those things that everyone goes through. Failure is inevitable and failure is a lesson. And it's an essential part of growth, honestly. There have been plenty of times in my life where I have failed, but I'm also the type of person who really values learning and growth. And so sometimes, I don't know, for me, sometimes I don't like telling myself that failure doesn't exist, because some people will be like, well, it's just a lesson, which is true. But it's important to acknowledge when you, didn't reach a goal in the same way that you thought you were going to or that you anticipated. And if it's something that you want to work on, to continue working on those things, right? So for me, there's definitely been a few, I think, pivotal moments in my life that I failed that has really, taught me a lot and shaped who I am today.
What do you think those moments are?
For me, I think the first instance of failure that I think I can think of, or something that I would consider failure, was probably in middle school. So I played sports growing up. Like I was really into baseball. So I played baseball from the time I was 5 years old to the time I was like 13. And so that was definitely my sport. But when I was in middle school, I really wanted to try playing basketball and football as well. And so I tried football my 7th grade year. And honestly, I got like 2 weeks in and I was just like, no, you know what? Like, this is too much pressure. There's too much going on. I was really stressed about my grades at that point. Once again, that was kind of one of the pitfalls of being the youngest sibling, is that you saw the successes of your older siblings. And so for me, I was, felt a lot of pressure, and I didn't think that I could handle all of it. So I actually quit the football team. And so that's one of those moments for me that was at the time, not directly somebody else telling me that I failed, but for me, that was like a big moment of failure. And something similar happened when I got to 8th grade as well. I was trying out for a basketball team, and then I was just like, no, I don't think I want to follow through with these tryouts. And so, thinking back on those experiences, those are probably some of the first times that I felt like I failed myself. And I think that's, the type of failure that hurts the most, honestly, for me, is, when you worked hard for something, or you think you want to do something, you don't see it through. To me, that's like a big form of failure, but I learned so much from that, in those experiences, and just trusting in myself more.
How are you able to learn from those experiences? I know failure can be rough. It can seem like this big, daunting thing.
For sure.
So how do you get over it?
For me, to address kind of the self-failure piece, or feeling like you had failed yourself, there was a moment a couple of months ago where I was doing something, or I was about to take on some task, and I forget what it was, but it was really daunting to me. It was really scary. And for whatever reason, I was just like, there's not going to be a desirable outcome. And so I really reflected on those moments that I, given up on myself back in middle school, which sounds crazy because it was so many years ago, but really reflected on those moments. And I told myself, I never want it to be the case again, that I tell myself that I wish I hadn't given up on myself so easily. And so for me, it's really just taking the opportunity to have intentional reflection afterwards. And so for me, that kind of looks like talking to people. I really love talking to people about my experiences, and that's kind of how I reflect on experiences. Sometimes I might journal about something, or I might just honestly, talk through it with myself, talk through whatever experience I had, if it was a success or a failure, and really assess how I want to do better. I think that's the biggest thing, is just being intentional, not only reflecting, but really thinking about what actions you can take next. Not necessarily to prevent that from happening again, but to have a more desirable outcome the next time.
Yeah, I feel you on that. That's one of the things that I would say is the biggest way that I try and handle and deal with failure, whether it's a physical, I did bad on a test, I didn't get what I was supposed to get on a test, or if I feel like I failed myself, how you're saying, a self-imposed failure type thing. But I feel like self-reflection is one of the biggest tools. Just being able to take a step back and be like, this is what happened. I didn't achieve what I wanted to achieve, but then not wallowing in the pain and whatever emotion that may be driven up because of the failure, instead of wallowing in that, but actually looking for the next steps that you can take to get a desired outcome in the future so that you can have a success in the future. And I feel like that's one of the things that helps me the most, especially writing in a journal. I feel like everybody should have a journal.
Honestly, good investment. I think the other thing that I'm kind of thinking about, you were talking about like your exams and things like that when you have those physical moments of failure, is that sometimes I think that we put a lot of pressure on ourselves by setting unrealistic goals for the amount of time or the amount of effort that we can put in, or setting goals, that are so, rigid or don't have any type of mobility, that when we do fail, it hurts a lot more. And I think it's important that, we have high expectations for ourselves, but there are some circumstances, I think, in the past where I felt like I've had this really big failure, and because of that I was like, man, I'm gonna lose this opportunity, or I'm not gonna have the opportunity to do this again, and I really flopped on this. But in reality, I had set myself up for failure in the beginning by setting unrealistic expectations and goals for myself, right? Yeah. So it's maintaining a high standard but also being very real with yourself. That's important.
That made me think of SMART goals.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's like specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Like actually having goals that are, as you said, attainable and realistic and timely. Y'all know what SMART goals and all that type of stuff. But how do you go about setting goals like that while maintaining those high expectations that you have for yourself?
That's a really good question. I think that I really look at the kind of season that I'm in that part of my life, and what I'm able to handle and what I can maintain. I know that there are certain, circumstances for me where I may not get as high of a grade on an exam. And so it's, whether it's I waited too late to study for it, or I didn't have as many resources as I thought I was going to have, or I'm not sure how to prepare for it or how to study for it. When those kind of things come into play, then I really assess, what's realistic for me personally. And then I try my best not to compare myself to other people as well. Comparison, they say, comparison is a thief of joy. And that's certainly true for me. I hang out with a lot of really intelligent people. And so sometimes I'm not going to have the highest grade, and I have to, understand that that's okay. And that, being around those people and surrounding myself with those people are inevitably going to make me better. But at the end of the day, trying not to compare myself, but really work with those people. And I think that that's, an important piece. But in terms of, setting goals, to get back to your question, sorry. But in terms of setting goals, I do try to do SMART goals. I might not follow the exact format, but I really do try to make sure that, for me, I have some goals that are a little bit more quantifiable, and then I have some goals that are just, I know I've reached that goal like internally when I've gotten to that point. I don't know if that makes sense, but I have those goals as well. So keeping them balanced. I like to set short-term goals for myself and more long-term goals, because I'm also a big picture type of guy too. So really looking at, how all of these short-term goals can lead up to what I eventually want to do in the future. And so that's kind of how I set goals and how I, maintain, I guess, realistic standards for myself too.
Yeah, I try and set, because I'm a very futuristic thinker. I always think about the future, like big picture, big idea type things. And one of the things that I always struggled with was making it quantifiable. So I can say that I want to open up a business.
Right.
But how much revenue do I want to make from that business? How many people do I want to impact on this business? How many hours do I want to put in a week in this business? Like all those different types of things, like the different goals and actual measurements that I can say, yes, if I reach this, then I reach that goal. I feel like those I have trouble with actually making. I'm more so, I want to start a business. Once I start the business, then I'll be good. If I'm helping a lot of people, then it's up to my discretion. But I feel like there has to be a balance. As you said, there are some goals that aren't quantifiable. They're more so like qualitative.
Yep.
Yeah. And then there are some that are more quantitative, that you can have that specific check mark if you achieve it or anything like that.
Right.
But I'm just excited for all like the stuff that I've thought of, and like all the stuff that everybody's like planning on doing. Just because, in my opinion, even though you may not get to the specific thing that you said, one of the big things that you can take away either from a success or a failure is the lessons that you learned, the things that went right, the things that went wrong. And even if you fail, you learn some stuff.
Right. You grow through that process of just trying to, attain that goal. And I think that I've had a lot of opportunities like that where, although I wasn't able to see the goal all the way through, or it didn't come to fruition in the way that I thought it did, just that process of, getting to that goal or working towards that goal is certainly opportunities for growth and opportunities for learning.
Yeah, I like failure. Even though it's like weird, I used to not like failure because I was like, I can't fail because it's just this big bad thing that society like made it. But in reality, I feel like that's where the biggest lessons come from. Like successes, they make me happy, and I'm like, yes, I finally got to this. But if you fail, then you know what to do next. Yeah. And of course, you gotta succeed at the end of the day. Right. But at the same time,
I mean, for me, I feel like failure is one of those things that is derived from fear, and that fear is derived from things that are unknown to us. Yeah. And so for me, I'm really scared of failure because I'm scared of, what's going to happen after I fail. Like, I was in a class once, and this sounds wild. I kept on getting like really low grades in that class. And so my mind just immediately kind of went to this space of like, okay, it's going to drop my GPA. I'm not going to have this foundation that I thought I was going to have, coming into college. And then how is that going to play into what I'm able to do in the future with college? Like, how many things am I going to be able to get involved in? Or am I just going to have to focus on school? Like, do I have too much on my plate? And so for me, my mind kind of spirals at the idea of failure. But it's those times where, once again, where I've learned to set more reasonable goals and not be so hard on myself either, right? Like, that's an important part of failure too, understanding that it's a part of our lives, that it's inevitable that it's going to happen at some point, but then doing the work to adjust and having that time for reflection as well, like we talked about, so that you are able to adjust and take those actions that are necessary to get better.
Yeah, and I feel like I just did this speaking training like this past weekend. But one of the big things that we talked about was staying like present and in the moment, and being able to appreciate that every moment in life, like the present right now, this podcast, whereas we are recording this podcast right now, we could be doing anything else with our time. Right. And this is what we're doing right now to make the most of it, treat it as a gift. And of course, think about the future, set goals, plan ahead, all these different types of things. But when we get so caught up in the future, thinking that, I failed this test or I did bad in this class, that this is going to have this gigantic ripple effect that we make a complete mess and madness and chaos that will not happen, that we can't even control if it happens or if it doesn't. We're just sitting here wasting time when we could be choosing to be happy. We could be going to do something else instead of being like, dang, I failed a test. This is going to ruin my chance at being a vet or something.
Yeah, when I came into college, I was really nervous about, because everyone tells you, if you don't keep this GPA, you can lose your scholarship. If you don't focus on your grades, and you're gonna fall behind. And I came in, and so when I would get a bad grade on an exam, once again, like I said, it would kind of be this spiral effect. But now it's just one of those things where, I'll call up my friends and be like, hey, how'd you do on that exam? Or, and then it's something that we kind of laugh about, because I think about it, like, for me, being a person of faith as well, I just kind of think like there hasn't been a situation, or there hasn't been a hard moment that God hasn't gotten me through to this point. Like, really just thinking about it, like, there has not been a struggle, there's not been like a bad day that I haven't gotten through. And so it's just like, there's, for me, a lot of opportunity to see the bigger picture after failure now. Yeah. And it really, for me, it like really takes having those moments where I stop and I'm just like, okay, before you have this moment where you spiral and think about all the things that could happen, let's take a moment to think about all the opportunities that there are from this moment, right? From this time of failure. Whether it be an exam, whether it be like a physical failure or a different goal that you have for yourself, how can we just take the time to intentionally stop our brain from going into that space of just this like negative ripple effect? So yeah, that's important to me.
Yeah, one of the things I do like with tests now, as you said, like you do bad on tests. Oh yeah, you did bad on. I did bad on that test. You did bad on that test too. But just like in the realm of testing and everything, just relating that to a failure. Like if I don't feel like I did well on a test, I used to, as you said, just go down this like deep rabbit hole of, oh, this is about to mess up my entire life.
Right.
But when in reality, that's just like a speck of the big picture of what I'm doing and everything. But now with tests, I'm like, if I feel like I did good on a test, or I feel like I did bad on a test, it's really, it is what it is. And I used to not like that at all, but it kind of is what it is because I can't do anything to change that. But if I do bad on a test, and I feel like I did bad on a test, even before I know, I'm like, okay, so I can implement a study plan that's going to ramp up how many times I was studying for this class. And that's something that I can do to be able to affect the next test, which I actually have some sort of, I won't say like control over, but I can study to be able to give me a better chance at doing well on the next test. For sure. But I can't change the past test. And that's something that I try and relate to all different types of things in my life. If, like, right now my car is messed up, but what am I going to do? Am I about to flip out over it? Or am I about to keep on having a good week, keep on having good days, and then be able to finish and fix that when I have the time to, instead of being like, oh, dang, my whole day is ruined. My whole week is ruined because my car, half of my bumper's hanging off or something like that.
It takes a lot of intentionality too. It takes a lot of intentionality to, you know, put ourselves in those spaces where we don't, you know, go down that rabbit hole and everything as well. And I think like another thing, and I'm curious as to what your perspective is on this, but for a really, really long time, and this is something that I had to personally work through, is that I would tie some of the more tangible, both successes and failures into, you know, believe that was intrinsically tied into my self-worth and my value as just a human being that exists on this earth. And I think that there was like a lot of unlearning that I had to do for myself. But have you had any experiences like that? And, you know, has that impacted you a whole lot?
I would say, one, I'm a very competitive person. OD competitive person, probably the most competitive person that you know, even if you don't know me. But I feel like that kind of ties into labels. Yeah. And I guess when I was growing up, like I used to play flag football. I wanted to be the MVP. When I got the MVP trophy, I was so happy that I got it. So I was like, yeah, I'm like that. And all different things, getting A's on my report card, getting straight A's. I was on honor roll. They would tell you these things and you'd be like, oh, this makes me good. This is what gives me value. This is what people want to see out of me. And I eventually kind of had to unlearn that, as you said, as well. Just because I learned that labels don't really define who you are. You can have a whole bunch of stuff on your resume. You can have all these accolades. You can have amazing grades. But if you're not I feel like if you're not a good person, then that doesn't really make you. And I feel like that also, even though it's loosely related, like standardized tests and everything, but like having test scores, just because you get a good test score does not mean that you are better qualified than somebody else to be in said position or to do said job, or that you're more impactful, or that you're more smart than somebody else. It's all like subjective in a way, so you can't really control the labels and the way that other people think about you, but you can control how you think about yourself, and you can love yourself. But yeah, I'm a man of faith too. So I just give it to God, and then God made me how I am, so I'm gonna live how I want to. I want to impact as many people as I can, touch as many people in a good and impactful way. But I can't get mad or waste my time trying to convince other people that I'm this so amazing person. If you think I'm an amazing person, then I'm happy, because that's what I want to do, and I want to be able to influence and impact your life in a positive way.
There's like a lot of, you know, for me, you know, as a multiracial Black man, especially growing up in a community where I didn't see a whole lot of people like me in honors or AP classes and things like that as well, you get this like sense of imposter syndrome as well, and that kind of makes the failures in your life hit even worse. Because you're for me, you know, I can't speak for other people. So for me, I felt like I was constantly having to prove myself, you know, with my peers, because I felt like there were times where they didn't take me seriously. And so sometimes it felt like I was the token in a lot of situations. And so it took a lot, and it took me coming to A&T as well and having this HBCU experience to know that, I wasn't the token. I'm surrounded by a whole bunch of brilliant Black people here at A&T. And so, it's also like, failure and handling failure also means that like you have to have a support system, in my opinion, as well. It's just like getting through failures and stuff on your own. There's some things that you have to handle and you have to manage by yourself, but then there's a lot of failures in your life that you might think are just too big to handle, and the person next door to you is going through the same exact thing. And so it's just really working together with people to get through failures, I think, is important, especially when you feel like this sense of imposter syndrome, where you feel like you don't belong in certain situations. Just giving context with others.
Yeah, you gotta have a positive circle. I feel like that's one of the biggest things with dealing with failure. You gotta have a positive circle, positive support system, because you can do bad on, or you can have some sort of failure, whatever it may be, and you can think it's like, oh, this could be like the end of the world for me. But then you go to somebody else and they're like, why are you making such a big deal over this little thing? And as long as it's somebody that you trust, if it's a good person that's in your circle, you're gonna be uplifted by that. You're gonna realize that you're just going down this whole spiral that we're trying to say.
Right.
Don't go down. Because it's just going to have negative consequences on you. But question, I forgot what you specifically said, but how would you stay resilient, when like you encounter one failure, from one failure to the next? Say like you have like a big string of failures. How are you able to stay resilient and persevere through all of that?
That is tough. I think for me, like, once again, just really looking at the bigger picture, I think that's important to me. There have been times where, I'm told no, or I feel like the world's kind of against me, or, there are obstacles that are insurmountable. And for me, it's just really, trusting in God, trusting in the bigger plan. And that's, of course, easier said than done. But just like trusting that whatever the experiences I'm going through are going to be things that I'm going to learn from. And I think that that's what's gotten me through a lot of failures. And, of course, having that support system is also important when you have that string of failures, and not keeping it to yourself. Like, that's a really big thing. Yeah. A lot of people will do this thing where they think that it's a sign of weakness if you keep your failures or you keep your downfalls to yourself. And so for me, it's definitely one of those things where I have to sometimes vocalize those failures. Like, even if I feel like other people may perceive me as weak or may perceive me as less than, it's really vocalizing those things. And because at that point you're taking ownership of it, right? You're taking ownership of this situation that you were in. And that's like kind of one of the first steps, I think, in the reflection process, is understanding what happened, owning that, and then working to have whatever outcome you want, and that the outcome could shift, that goal can shift based on, your previous experiences and everything. But for me, I think that's the biggest thing, is just, vocalizing it and making sure that I'm not keeping all of those things to myself, those feelings, those emotions tied in with the failure as well.
So being able to talk it out with the support circle,
the
support group. Did you ever have to change your circle to be able to achieve that?
Yeah, absolutely. Just as there's people who are going to support you, there are also people who you may have in your circle that will take advantage of that moment of failure that you have, will take advantage of that moment where you were down or where you weren't really feeling a situation, and use that for their own advancement, right? Like, so there are people, and it's important to be cognizant of those people who are gonna, I don't know, I can't think of the word right now, who are gonna maximize or for lack of a better term, kind of like profit off of your losses, or who are gonna use your failure, your moment where you're down or you feel, once again, like the world is against you, for their own good, right? So it's just, taking those vulnerabilities that you have, and taking those kind of like gaps in your confidence and using it to continue to beat you down, or using it, for their own good. So yeah, I think it's important to be cognizant of your circles. And there's also different people who you can share some of your failures with, you know what I mean? Like, there are people in my circle who I know have gone through similar experiences to me, that I can share a lot of my life with. And, those are one group of people. But then you have people who you share other types of failures with. Jeremiah isn't going to know what's going on in my agribusiness class because he's not in there. So talking to him about failing the agribusiness class, like, yeah, he might be able to talk about, I'm not failing my agribusiness class, by the way, friends, but talking to
amazing student here.
talking to him about, failing a test within that class or not doing well in that class is not going to be the same as talking to someone who's actually in that class. I mean, I think that we sometimes can bond over failures. I mean, I think that that's something natural to do. So yeah, I certainly believe that there are reasons why you would change your circle, based on the independent circle, based on just the season of your life that you're going through.
Yeah, I feel that like 100%. Like there are different friend groups, and I would say there are different people that you go to for different things that are in your circle. Some people that you go for when you want to have fun. There are some people that you go to when you need to study, but then there are also the people that you can go to when something bad happens or when there's a failure that happens or anything like that. For sure. Relate to you in different like realms and different all that. Pretty much check your circle.
Absolutely
is what I want to say, and that I feel like that was one of the biggest things that helped me deal with failure and also comparison. Because as I was saying, like I'm a very competitive person. And I feel like one of the big things about failure, I feel like if nobody compared themselves to anybody, failure wouldn't really mean that much. Everybody would just be able to relate to everybody's different failures and everything, because we wouldn't be trying to one-up somebody else or think that if we fail this, then that means that somebody else is above us. But I have like a love-hate relationship with comparison, because I feel like that is what makes me push as hard as I do, but at the same time, it can get toxic at times.
I mean, I think there's another way that we can look at that, though, right? So, like, instead of saying comparison, there's a difference between, for me, and like knowing you as well. Like, I know that you look up to a lot of people as well, and they're like, you have a lot of role models, and it's okay to see yourself in somebody else's shoes or to see yourself kind of being in a situation. But I think that it's also the case that like comparison in the context of your close peers or comparison in a way that's overwhelmingly like toxic can actually, do the opposite and take away from your opportunities to learn and take away from your own self-identity too. Because, if we spend our whole life thinking about what other people want for us or thinking about what other people have and, wanting to beat them out, then when we get to the end of our life, what are we going to say that we accomplished because we wanted to do it, as opposed to the things that we accomplished because other people wanted us to do it because other people have already done it? You know what I mean? I think it's important to have role models in your life. It's important to have people who we look up to. I think that it can get very toxic very quick when we use comparison when we tie comparison into our self-worth. I think that's what it boils down to.
Yeah. And I feel like that's exactly what you just said. It was like you hit the nail on the hammer, whatever that.
On the head?
Yeah, on the head. But I feel like that becomes even more important the more that you move up in life and the more that you progress in life. When you're checking your circle, making sure, because you know how they say, make sure that you surround yourself with people that are better than you, that you want to be like.
Right.
You can aspire to be like. You can't be comparing yourself in a toxic way to those people, because then it'll take away from your self-worth. You won't be comfortable with yourself. And I also feel like being comfortable in yourself is one of the biggest things that you can do to be able to become comfortable with failing. Not saying that you want to fail or that failing is, quote-unquote, your goal.
Right.
But that if you fail, then you can be able to get back up and learn from it and then pursue a success and goal and all that type of jazz.
Absolutely. Just outside of even, like, let's take ourselves outside of academics and professional stuff. Like, I feel like we've talked about that a lot. There's a lot of times where I felt like I've given up on my ability to, even do something as simple as socialize with people. Like, what are they gonna think of me? It comes back to that idea of like unraveling and discovering who we are as people. Because when we don't do that, we're setting ourselves up for failure. But even things as simple as that, where I've not let myself go, get into certain like social situations or not giving myself the opportunity to try certain things because of the fear of failure. And once again, that fear is derived from things that are unknown. A lot of times we don't know what the future holds. We don't know what other people are going to think of us. We don't know what the result of whatever we're doing is going to be oftentimes. And so with that, there's this kind of fear that's derived from that. But, I've learned the more and more that I've gone on is that, like, I don't want to find myself in those situations where I'm just like, man, I didn't let myself do that, and now I'm bummed because I regret not giving myself the chance to do that. So especially going, I think, kind of for us going into senior year and understanding that we're also about to go out into life afterwards and and I say this, with quotation marks, it's just like the real world, kind of going into that as well. I want to have a firm understanding of who I am and the things that I value and taking it and pursuing things that align with that and not being scared to do so.
Do you think that you found your purpose, and you think that finding your purpose would help get to that point? Also, fun fact I learned today: the average person learns and says that they figure out their person when, guess what age?
Their purpose? I say like 57.
Yeah, 60.
Oh, I was close.
Like the American Clinic of Psychology or something. I forgot what it was.
That's wild.
But do you think that you have found your purpose, and if so, if that's helped with becoming comfortable in yourself and being able to know what you value, be able to do the things that you want to do, be able to pursue through no matter what life throws at you?
It's definitely something that I think I have a better grip on than I've had in the past, but I don't think I've fully identified that. I think I still have a lot of growth to do, and I think I still have a lot of guidance, to participate in, I guess, before I figure out what my full purpose is. But I do believe that, one of what I believe is my biggest purpose is to really just help other people grow. Helping, and part of that actually is kind of understanding what their failures mean and understanding how they can better equip themselves to take on this world, and doing so through the lens of agriculture especially. Like, I think that that's definitely been one of the consistents in terms of my purpose is working in this industry. So I think that's kind of one of my biggest purposes, and that's definitely something that stays in the back of my mind. And once again, it kind of informs my values and things as well. I mentioned at the beginning when I was introducing myself that I really love agriculture. I really love advocacy, and this includes things like equity, both within and outside of the agriculture industry. And I really love people. I really love learning from people. I really love growing with people. And I feel like that's a part of those things kind of intertwine, develop my purpose a little bit, and those are the things that kind of guide the opportunities. And so I kind of, once again, the opportunities that I go after, I want them to supplement that. I want them to add to that. And I'm a really big person on pouring into other people. So whatever opportunity I participate in, if I'm going to grow from it, I'm going to take that opportunity and pour into other people with it. And I think that's how I approach taking on things, not knowing what the end result will be.
No, yeah, I feel like the same exact way. Once I figured out my purpose, which I feel like I figured out a lot younger than most people. Like, I know the vet business I want to do. I have all this different type of stuff.
Right.
But as you said, it's like under the scope of building a world-changing business and brand and image of myself that can pour into other people and motivate other people, inspire other people. And as you said, your way is that you enjoy is through agriculture, but the way that I enjoy is through veterinary medicine. But then the podcast is also doing the same sort of thing, doing something. The NFL is doing the same sort of thing. So they all kind of integrate and merge to make my purpose what it is today.
Absolutely.
But I wrap up every episode 2 questions. So everybody hates me when I ask these questions because they're really deep questions. But first question: what are the 3 things that you live by, or your 3 keys to life?
Jeremiah. I feel like I heard these on another podcast and I thought about what I was going to say and I forgot. First of all, it's okay not to have it all together. Be undoubtedly yourself. Then take the leap. Those are the 3 things that I would say. to live by. What was the other question?
And then the second question, this one's even worse. If you could have a conversation with a 12-year-old you, what would it be about, and what advice would you give and why?
Ooh. This one, I was in middle school at that time, so this was a interesting period. I think that this conversation would be about just my own kind of self-confidence. I think that, at the time I really didn't have a good grip as to who I was as a person. I don't think that I understood like the importance of just bringing my authentic self to spaces and everything. And so I think that I would just tell myself that it's okay just to do what you want to do. It's okay to have certain interests. I had interests and I had hobbies that were very unusual for me as a guy, as like a black man as well, like those hobbies and stuff that I was interested in. And so for me, it's just, telling myself like it's okay to do those things. Don't have to listen to the negative comments of other people, because at the end of the day, like, it's your life and you get to choose how you want to live it.
Facts. Beautiful. I feel like that would be very impactful, especially for anybody at the younger age. I feel like that would be very impactful. But thank you so much for joining me on this podcast episode, sharing your breadth of knowledge and thoughts with me, as well as being just an amazing person and great friend as well.
I appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me to be here.
Well, thank you for joining me. Anything that you would like to promote, shameless plugs, things that you have going on that you would like to say something about, or last words that you would like to leave the audience with?
If you are interested in more stuff on advocacy and agriculture, follow my social media page on Instagram for the agra.culture. Once again, FORTHEAGRI.culture.
Or the agri.culture. But thank you so much again. Be on the lookout for more episodes, and also stay tuned for all the special guests that I'll have on in the future. I'll continue to have amazing conversations with incredibly dope people that I met through my many adventures throughout this thing that we call life. Also, follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Through Jeremiah's Eyes for updates and more content. And it would also be really amazing if you could also like, share, and subscribe to my podcast, so that you don't miss another episode and we can continue to grow this amazing community. Thank you so much for your time, and I can't wait to see you in the next episode for another look through my eyes. See you soon.